Well, welcome to the West Sports Show. A bit of a West Coast edition here. I'm Glen Quartermain and I'm joined by Craig O'Donoghue. How are you, Cod?
Going well, Quarter. It's good to see footy back in earnest on the weekend.
It was indeed, and we're not far away, not many sleeps to go. I think, what is it, about 9?
Getting very, very close until opening round. Our two teams over here have to wait another week, but one more game of pre-season games this weekend, and then the real stuff actually begins.
So let's have a bit of a look at West Coast, and I'd like to look at their attack this week because obviously they didn't kick nearly enough goals last year. A lot of that is due to obviously they're rebuilding their back line, they're rebuilding their midfield, they're rebuilding their forward line, but they're starting to take a bit of structure, starting to get a bit of bone structure there in that Eagles forward line. Jamie Cripps, their leading goal kicker last year with 24. Nothing against Jamie Cripps, been a fantastic player, but that probably therein lies the reasoning. Hey, 24 goals from your leading goal kicker. What do you make of the West Coast attack? Jake Quartermain, great to see him back from that shoulder surgery. Obviously All-Australian the year before. Looked really good, I thought, in the Origin game with a magnificent midfield ahead of him, so it always makes it easier. But he looks fit and ready to go. I think we saw enough of Jobe Shanahan last year to think that he's going to certainly be a long-term prospect for the Eagles in a key position in attack. Then you've got Archer Reid, Jack Williams, who've shown glimpses, and of course there's Cooper Duff-Tytler, a ruck forward who's going to spend a lot of time in the forward line when he plays this year. What do you think about the key position players at West Coast?
They are the land of the giants. That's what West Coast are building around. And you look at their success over the years, and it has been built around having lots of key position players who you can rely upon, who can take marks, kick goals. Josh Kennedy is the prime example with Jack Darling, Quinton Lynch and Ash Hansen. When you look back onto that 2006, and you got Summer and Carl Langdon and the like back in the 90s. So they like to build, as every team does, they like to build with the key position players. And it's pretty clear that they've got plenty of talented ones there now who will now fight for the right to be the long-term solution. As you say, Jake Quartermain being the obvious one to lead that forward line now that Oscar Allen and Jack Darling have both left, but the turnover in their forward line across the past 18 months has been dramatic. So it's the last part of their rebuild rather than the first part. They've added players who can play right now and be good players in the back line. They've added players who can play and have an impact in the midfield right away. Their forward line is going to take time because they are young and tall, and that's where the pain really comes from in rebuilds.
And also the midfield is still young and developing. So I think Will Dersma is going to play a bit on the wing, not as much as an inside mid. I think he's not built like that, and he's certainly not ready yet. But I think maybe some time as a high forward. So we'll see a bit of him. I think we've both glimpsed him in the preseason, and he's a beautifully balanced athlete. He knows where to put himself to get the footy. Executes really well. He just needs a bit of muscle on the bone. That's all. It's going to be tough for him out there. But look, the midfield, I guess as a forward, you're as good as your midfielder is in many ways. So Harley Reid looks fit. He looks like he's a bit leaner. I've mentioned Dersma already. Elijah Hewitt we expect to run through there. So there's going to be plenty happening. The one area I think you can divide them up into key talls. You've got the mid-sized players, players like Jack Graham, Elliot Yeo, who I sort of...
He has to be a forward.
Well, he has to be. It's interesting because the cacker with Elliot Yeo late last year when he didn't play was that he'd go to half-back where he was made an All-Australian. But I think, he'll go forward and spend little bursts through the midfield, and we saw a bit of that at the weekend.
Yeah, I was expecting him to play back over the weekend. I thought with the way their backline was just decimated by injuries and unavailabilities, I thought he had to play back. The moment he started at full forward, and he was the deepest forward when the game began, that was just an indication that they've gone, well, we have to manufacture some forwards this season, and he's going to be one of the guys that we're going to put there. So I think we can rule out him being a defender now just based on the fact that he didn't play in defence when they needed him to on the weekend, and he looked okay as a forward as well. I'm not sure he's a long-term solution for them. Obviously, he's
does he have 5-6 minutes at a time running through that midfield, just taking a bit of the pressure off?
Yeah, I think that's what he's going to be. But from a forward line perspective, it's just so hard. Like in 2024, the Eagles kicked 229 goals, and 84 of them are from guys who are no longer at the club.
Yeah,
and that's just over a year ago. So when you look at last year, they averaged a goal from 19.7% of their inside 50s, which was the lowest in the AFL, and they had the second lowest number of inside 50s. So they don't get it in there enough, and when they do, they struggle to convert. So finding a way to make the new players who have talent, the Shanahans and the Cooper Duff Tylers and all the key position players, Archer Reeds, give them enough opportunity to score goals whilst also competing against such elite defenders is going to be their real challenge. And that's where, as you mentioned before, who have we got at ground level? If the West Coast will turn around and say, who can crumb the ball, because it's going to be bloody hard for those guys to mark, they have to manufacture some guys at ground level.
So it's a turnover game now, okay? So a lot of scores are generated from half-back. A lot of scores are generated from retention of the ball inside 50. So that, as you mentioned, that's an area where there's a work in progress for the Eagles. But retention of the ball inside 50, who is the pressure forward at West Coast? You go through the names. Unfortunately, Noah Long has now been ruled out for the year, so we wish him the very best.
And he would have been that guy.
He would have been a guy they'd look at in that role. Tyler Brockman, we're not sure what the football future holds for him at this stage, but Matt Owies, Malachi Champion, Tyler Williams, Jacob Newton, take a pick, but none of those really jump out at me as the pressure forward they need.
So Malachi Champion maybe has the pressure elements in his own game where he could be that person. But I think the reality at West Coast right now is there's a huge opportunity for someone to put their hand up and say, I'll be that guy. If you are not getting a game as a defender or a midfielder or something like that, and you are someone who goes, I'm under 185 centimetres, I could be a pressure forward. I'll turn myself into someone. It could be a Luca Grego as an example, who has been playing as back and bit of mid as a kid and was a tackling machine. He could say, I'll be that guy. Tom Gross could say, he'll be that guy. Harvey Johnson could say, he'll be that guy. There's an opportunity for someone to say, I'll do it. I'll sacrifice whatever I need to do to get myself into the team because I'm not going to play in those other positions because we've drafted elite midfielders or elite defenders in those spots. I'll become the pressure forward and that will get me into the team. You've got to find a way to convince the coaches that you're needed, and that's the opportunity. It's
not about goals. So you don't have to go out there. We're not measuring you on 2 or 3 goals a game. We're measuring you on your ability to tackle, to keep the ball in there for stoppage, and giving your other forwards a go. That's the key to that position, I think.
Yeah, and that will be so important to this team also when you consider how hard it is to kick goals as a Cooper Duff Tyler or a Job Shanahan. So when you look at history, right, these are the guys who were drafted recently who are just genuine, elite, talented tools. So if we start with Sam Darcy, 3 goals from 4 games in his debut season, no goals from 3 games in year 2. It took him 3 seasons to become a player who could kick 30 goals in a season. Riley Thilthorpe didn't kick 30 goals in a season until year 5. He kicked 18 goals from 14 games in his debut season. Jamari Ugle-Hagan, 7 goals in his first year, 18 in his second, then he got to that 35 goals. Josh Tracy took 4 years to get there. Aaron Cadman only kicked 6 goals from 12 games in year 1 as a number 1 draft pick. Jake Waterman didn't kick 30 goals until year 7. He kicked 13 goals from 16 games.
Probably had
a
guy by the name of Josh Kennedy alongside him.
But Josh Kennedy kicked 18 goals from his first 29 games. It's bloody hard.
How many? But while he was at Carlton?
No, that includes while he was at Carlton, yeah. But it took him a long time to become the player.
Oh, it does. As they say, it's probably the position where you mature the slowest is as a tall forward in a football team.
So hardest spot on the ground to play, and West Coast, other than Waterman, are relying on these kids. So you've got to put games in them. You just have to play them. There's no point playing them in the waffle. They have to find out ways to compete with big-bodied defenders who are going to make life difficult for them, and that will fast-track their development. So if you're an Eagles fan, you've got to look at it and go, well, what can we get from these guys? Look for the small benefits game by game rather than hoping that they can just jump out of the ground and do something magical.
One thing I did like about Job Shanahan last year was that he's kicked 2 bags of 3 goals. So and a lot of Jake Waterman wasn't available in the second half of the year. So I like what I see from him, and it's going to be a slow learning curve for him. He still has to learn his leading patterns and what have you, but I think there's a lot of promise there, certainly from him. That the 1-2 punch with him and Jake Waterman is something that if they can get it right in the midfield, there'll be periods where I think this midfield will be really humming this year. But of course, it's about putting it together for 4 quarters.
Yeah, and I've loved the way they've recruited because if you look at history from a forward line perspective, you look at who you barrack for in Hawthorn. It was Dermott and it was Dunstall. And then it became Buddy and Roughhead. I barrack for Essendon.
A few good fringe players around the edges too.
But it's the keys that you want. So as an Essendon supporter, it was Lloyd and Lucas. At Brisbane Lions, success, Jonathan Brown, Alistair Lynch. you can build a premiership team around having two key guns who are the same age. And we thought it was going to be Oscar Allen and Jake Quartermain together. That hasn't worked out. So you just got to find ways to get these guys in. And when you can get the elite ones, if you're patient, and as a fan, be really patient, because they're going to have days where they're not going to touch it, and they're going to have days where you go, oh my God, he just jumped out of the ground, and they're going to have games in between. So
Collingwood probably broke that mould a little bit, didn't they, in 2023?
Yeah, they're a unique sort of situation. But when you look back at the ones who you get really, really excited about from key position players, I reckon they all come through together and they learn how to play together and become the ones that you can rely upon to just go absolutely nuts when the big games are on the line.
But yeah, the evolution of a player like Sam Darcy, do you think we're heading back towards the day where you could get somewhere? I suppose we got close to it last year, didn't we, with Jeremy Cameron, but where you could have 100-goal full forward again?
Well, we'll find out whether that's possible this year with the change of rules, and because the game will be sped up.
Quicker, yeah.
Yeah, and whether or not people are prepared to say, you know what, Sam Darcy, you are an elite forward who no one can stop. Let's funnel the ball through you no matter what. If we can see that sort of stuff and the ball's getting really deep to have easier shots at goal, that'll make a difference as well. People just have to be accurate with their shooting, which is just so important. I doubt we'll ever get back to 100 because the game isn't designed that way, but it'd be so exciting.
Someone's going to do
happen.
it. Someone will do it.
It'd be awesome if it did happen. It would be just amazing if it happened. So
stand rule, and I think the ruck rule too, stoppage work. I think centre bounce work or ball up work. I think there will be more opportunities for forwards.
I'd love to see one coach just turn around and say, similar to the first game at Optus Stadium between Sydney and West Coast, when Buddy Franklin just played deep the entire game because I think he was sore and they didn't want him running up the ground.
Kicked eight.
Yeah.
Kicked eight and did his heel and didn't play again for
Yeah, he was sore, but he stayed deep and they couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
And there was another game many years ago, Patrick Dangerfield was hurt and was just told play out of the square. And he went nuts.
That was against the Hawks,
yeah. So there's ways of doing things, but it's hard. But in terms of West Coast, when you look back to the weekend and the challenges that they'll face this year and what they need to do better. So on the weekend, they kicked 8 goals. 5 of them were from 50 metres out. So Willem Dersma took a mark after a horrible kick in from Jordan
first one
Clark.
of the game?
First one of the game. That was from 50 metres out with a howling gale behind them. Tom McCarthy kicked one from 80 metres. Noah Long had a set shot from 50 metres. Jacob Newton near the boundary with a 50-metre shot. And Job Shanahan with another one from a 50-metre shot. So the majority of their goals were coming from marks from outside 50, and the breeze helped with most of those. If you're shooting at Optus Stadium from 50 metres out, it's potluck really, or any stadium really, if you're going to be able to make the distance and you're going to be accurate. So they want to get the ball in a bit deeper. That'll be a challenge for them in terms of carrying it a little bit further. And giving these key forwards the chance to be 30, 40 metres out. And if you bring the ball to ground there, then you can have those smalls running around who can snap those goals. If those blokes hadn't have taken marks there, you're an extra kick inside 50 to try to generate the goal. So I think we'll see them trying to get a lot deeper now as well. And the Dersmas and the Harley Reeds and the Elijah Hewitts who have that pace about them will want to run and carry and be that 70-metre player rather than the normal 50-metre player.
What did you think of Tom McCarthy's presence in the midfield?
Love him as a midfielder. Yeah, I think he's going to be really important for them as a mid. Knows how to find the ball and does run with it.
And thinks quickly.
Yeah.
It makes good choices.
And when you look back to the start of the game, West Coast kicked 5 goals in the first quarter. Again, Breeze was helping them kick those goals, but they were dominating the midfield. They gave Andrew Brayshaw and Caleb Strong and Hayden Young a lesson early. So if they can do that sort of stuff, they're going to get it inside 50 more, which is going to give them the chance to score more goals. As I said, the problem was they didn't have the players last year to kick goals from their inside 50s, but they didn't get enough of those inside 50s. So if those midfielders can be bigger bodies now, stronger, fitter, and carry that ball when they get it, that will make a massive difference for them and help them to kick those scores.
So we'll get another look at West Coast on Sunday when they play Port Adelaide at Mineral Resources Park. Now, before we talk Dockers, the Matildas have landed. Yes, that's right, here in Perth. The AFC Women's Asian Cup Australia 2026 kicks off on Sunday when the Matildas take on the Philippines. Take your family from $95. That's for 2 adults and 2 kids. See 12 of the best women's football teams from Asia compete as Perth hosts 10 games, including Asia's top-seeded team, Japan. Plus, see the top talent from India, Vietnam, Chinese Taipei, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan. Get your tickets to Dream now at Ticketmaster. Let's just touch on Freo before we close this West Sports show. So they've got Adelaide down in Mandurah on Saturday. You're fresh from a training session. Are we expecting to see Sean Darcy play this weekend?
I'll be shocked after watching him today if he doesn't play some sort of footy this weekend. So I doubt it's worth playing him in the twos like they did with a lot of blokes last week. I think if you're going to play him, he needs to play in the AFL because there's no AFL-ready ruckman that you're going to be competing against if you're playing in reserves footy. So I would have thought you could play him for a half, potentially.
So what did he do today?
So today he did a warm-up by himself. Then they did some what I would call suicide runs, shuttle runs sort of things, which he did with that, and that looked like hard work for a ruckman, especially one who hasn't trained much for the past month. Then they did some full ground drills, and he moved really well in those, pushed from the wing, forward, took a mark, kicked a goal. Later on, there was a boundary throw-in where he tapped the ball down, actually ran forward, got the ball back, hit Pat Voss on the chest for a shot for goal as well. And then later on, they were doing their stoppage work, and it was him versus Mason Cox at boundary throw-ins. And so he's doing the pushing and shoving part of it, which tires everybody out. And he did quite well there also. So there were promising signs there from him. He didn't do the full running session that they did afterwards. Mason Cox would have enjoyed not having to do that because he looked like he was tonguing it at that point as the poor ruckman who had to do that as well. But yeah, there was enough there to say I reckon he could get through a half this weekend and then give him a chance to maybe push for round one.
So given that, we're probably more likely to see Luke Jackson playing a bit of ruck in the first, say, month of the season before he settles into that more full-time midfield role.
Possibly, yeah. Although Justin Lomie was interesting after the game the other day. He said that he doesn't see Jackson as the ruckman at the moment. He sees him as a midfielder, but they have to put him into the ruck every now and then because, as we said, push, shove, wrestle, twist, turn. You can't just turn up and do that. You have to be conditioned to it. So I would have thought that this weekend he'll play as a midfielder with Mason Cox being the main ruckman and probably Darcy coming in at different points because they need to work out what that midfield looks like. And there were times in the weekend where they, as I said, that young West Coast midfield did beat them. So they'd want to see what it looks like with that bigger body in there.
And so bring on the new ruck rules. It'd be really interesting to see what the game looks like. What did you make of Max Gawn's comment yesterday? Bring on the patella injuries.
Yeah, well, that's what the patella injuries and the PCLs were what happened from the jumping originally, but that was when they were coming from miles back. So we haven't really seen a lot of the two ruckmen coming in and jumping at each other from the smaller circle. So now that the smaller circle is there, it will come down to how high the umpires throw it up and what sort of philosophies that the ruckmen have when they jump. But if we do start seeing those PCL injuries or patella injuries or whatever you want to call them,
I might revisit it.
Yeah, then that will be a concern. But because we don't want that to happen. The clash of knee on knee is where you end up doing your PCL. Because it just bangs it back. So that will be something that we'll all be genuinely watching because you don't want to see ruckman having that again.
Well, let's bring it on, Cod, and we'll be back next week to talk about the two scratchies from the weekend.
Well, look forward to it. It should be a big weekend of footy, so bring it on.
And for more, head to thewest.com.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music.